Since the first morning of the first day of classes this year, the Harriet Irving Library Research Commons has been a destination of choice for students seeking attractive, functional spaces to do their coursework. Part of the fun of my job has been discovering and responding to the ways in which they engage with each other and with technologies. And so with this tour, I hope to impart a bit of the excitement that I experience daily, just being part of the action. Certainly one of the main attractions in the Research Commons is the Data Visualization Lab. Now this consists of a 3x5 grid of 55-inch LCD monitors that are capable of producing a 33 megapixel display. Now the wizard behind the curtain, if you will, is a Dell monster computer, not the technical term, but certainly apt, with 64 gigs of RAM. And so it essentially acts as a Windows dual monitor PC, ideal for the sorts of collaborations and visualizations of data, for example, where a large canvas comes in handy. So we've seen engineering design classes in here, students working on coding and visualizing various data, as well as virtual and in-person presentations, a little bit like what we're doing right now, where you can sort of feel merged with your content. We also leave the board open throughout the day and often with Google Earth on it so that folks can play around and get a sense of what the possibilities might be for them in using this bookable space. And so I've seen, for example, students in here zeroing in on the places where they grew up, right down to the very house or building in Mumbai or Singapore or Houston, and showing their friends. So it's become a little bit of a community focal point in the Research Commons. As with the rest of the Research Commons, the Lightboard Studio brings the best of tradition and innovation together to augment teaching and learning and research, as well as knowledge mobilization activities. So what we have here is a forward-facing, transparent, illuminated whiteboard or lightboard that enables you to either engage with an audience in real time or asynchronously by recording a session and bring up presentations that you can then annotate. You can take notes at the same time. So for example, this is a map of the Research Commons. We are currently in the Lightboard Studio over here. You're going to see whiteboards all throughout the Research Commons, and I know there's a bank of them along the south-facing wall, and there's also a really big one over here that we'll be finishing off the tour with. I've seen students come in here, and so for example, a geology graduate student who's working on some graphs and modeling data here, come in and do some recordings, go into the audio studio and do some voiceovers, as well as add a soundtrack that they created in GarageBand. There have been instructors coming in to work on mathematics equations, as well as folks running focus groups in a Teams or Zoom meeting and being able to take notes and capture those notes for posterity. So it's a highly functional space that is unique to the UNB environment, but we're hoping that with continued use, it's going to see particular proliferation potentially across UNB. Welcome to the Fabrication Lab. This is the second node in UNB's Makerspace ecosystem. And while it might look like activities such as 3D printing represent a revolution in how libraries serve their patrons, it's really an evolution of what we've always done, which is principally to do with fostering literacy and community. So in this case, it's maker literacy, which has to do with modeling and tangibly representing learning so that you can communicate and collaborate in new ways, as well as address practical challenges. So what we have here, for example, today, there's a student group working on designing tiny houses and placing them within the context of a hypothetical community. We're 3D printing our Fabrication Lab logo as well. There's some other technologies including sewing and different types of document scanning. On a community side, what we are doing here is bringing people together around either pedagogical or personal making projects that enable folks to learn from one another, experiment with new modes of expression and how those port into their learning in a supportive environment so that people can make mistakes and iterate on their projects as they go along. We also have a couple of interesting technologies, including a Cricut maker that enables folks, say, a UNB club or society, or perhaps a management group that have an entrepreneurship project where they want to make a short run of, say, t-shirts or mugs or buttons to illustrate a particular product that they're working on. One of my favorite pieces of technology in here is the 3D scanner. And what this has been used for so far are classes where artifacts that are fragile in nature and an instructor would like for their students to be able to engage with them either virtually or in a tactile manner. These can be scanned and then put into a virtual exhibit or 3D printed for manipulation. And I'll also mention that this has become a hub for students seeking tools within the library to make small repairs. I'm not always sure what exactly they're repairing, but I don't ask too many questions about it. Just let people take things, and invariably they do bring these tools back. To me, this nondescript nook epitomizes the research commons, where you have casual seating with plugs and USB ports, high tables, low tables, LCD screens that folks can port their laptops to, as well as the mobile whiteboards. You can tell this moment notwithstanding that this might not always be a quiet space. It's one that encourages collisions of people and ideas. This is the Innovation Hub with comfortable seating options. This is a popular space for group study, collaborations. There's a speaker series that happens here every week, as well as different classrooms meeting. We've had faculty retreats, and I've done some teaching in this room as well. It's a very popular spot in the Research Commons for a variety of needs. Large format plotter and printer is quite popular in the Research Commons with faculty and students who may have a print map that they want scanned to use virtually, or vice versa, or else are designing and printing a poster for a conference. We also help with the design piece. This is our quiet study lounge, very popular. Probably our most attractive study space. It offers a wonderful view of the Harriet Irving Rose Garden to the west, and the lights are on right now, but most often they're quite dim and folks make use of these lamps. They're also quite popular because there are plugs and USB ports, as you'll see throughout the Commons, and students couldn't say more about that. Well, this is the event space. I can tell from the way that the tables are set up at the moment that a class has just left. So it's a bookable, teachable space, but as with the Innovation Hub, it can accommodate different types of meetings and retreats and those sorts of things. The one thing that makes it stand out a bit is that it has the two 7-foot screens, so you bring a laptop and you can port to them. I've been told anecdotally that on the weekends sometimes there are sports games being played with the sound off, and that it's quite a popular spot. And I know that when there's not a class happening, it's usually full of students. It has a glass partition that we close for contained events, but if we were hosting, say, a book launch or a major announcement, then we can throw these open and open up to the larger space. And when there isn't a class happening, that's generally what we'll do. Our largest signature whiteboard has become a bit of a community focal point here in the Research Commons. One of our student assistants writes a question of the week on the wall. In this case, it is, what's your favorite dish? And then throughout the week, students weigh in. And as you can see, it's starting. By the end of the week, this entire space is going to be filled up with different tasty dishes, including strawberry shortcake and smart brains. That's certainly part of the fun for me, is to learn some of the lingo that I might not otherwise be up on. A bit unique for a library as well is our burgeoning kitchenette. Right at the moment, students can make coffee, and we are in discussions with the UNB Student Union, who have a food initiative as to what we could be providing here on an ongoing basis, perhaps fruit, apples and bananas in the morning. So this is something that's going to grow with the engagement of our student community. In these technology-infused, collaborative, beautiful spaces, and with programming that draws students together from across campuses and disciplines to learn from one another and apply that learning to challenges that matter to them, who knows what's going to happen here? What I do know is it's a story we're going to write together, and students are going to remember and love this space as their own, and they will tell their friends wherever they wind up in the world about their experiences only here at UNB.